I hope everyone's doing well today. Today we are going to continue to talk about slope-intercept form. And the objective for today is that students will graph equations in slope-intercept form by identifying and graphing the slope and y-intercept. So we're going over this again to clarify some mistakes that we saw on the quiz, on the quiz, and to make sure everyone feels 100% confident with this before we move forward into more complicated things. So what we already know, again, we're talking about slope-intercept form, which is also known as function form, where the y is alone on the left, so it's always going to say y equals, and we've already talked about it should say mx plus b on the right. And again, that is slope-intercept form. And the parts to it, we have the y and the x that represents the ordered pair. Again, they're always written as x comma y. And then we also have the m, which represents the slope of the line, and b, which represents the y-intercept. When we were talking about these b values or finding the y-intercept, a lot of people also put the x-intercept there. So again, b is just the y-intercept. Even though last week we found both intercepts, we're only talking about the y-intercept here. So again, that's where it crosses the y-axis. So to start us out, there's a couple problems here we're going to go through. And again, this is just a review. These are some simple mistakes that I saw people making last week when I looked over the work and on the quiz. So if we look at number one here, this first one, your job is to identify the m value and the b value. Again, the m being the slope and the b being the y-intercept. So if I go ahead and put our equation above it, sometimes that makes it easier to see what everything in the equation will be. So I have my y equals mx plus b there. And again, this is a little bit tricky, and there was one like this on the quiz, I believe, that had negative x, or the opposite of x, plus something. So if we look at this, x is the same as 1x. So our slope for this first one should be 1. So I will go ahead and put that in here. And then our y-intercept is our b value. And if you notice, we have to use the sign there. So this would be -4 or -4 for the first one. So those are our two values for the first one. Then if we look at the second one, again, you don't have to do these things, but I just find it easier for everyone if I write them in here. So we have mx plus b. And then if you look at that, our m value, go ahead and put it in the chat for me. Yep, so again, the m value, put it in the chat, whatever our m value is to the second equation. Yep, so I see most people putting it 3. And then our b value, again, go ahead and put the b value in the chat. Yeah, I see some people already put that. Yep, so it should be 10. So 3 is our m, our slope, and 10 is our y-intercept here. Here's some other tricky ones that were on the quiz that looked similar to this that I saw a lot of mistakes on. So if we talk about this one, again, we have y equals mx plus b is the equation we're talking about, or the form we're talking about. So our m value here should be straightforward, just like the last one. So go ahead and put that in the chat for me if you know what the m value is, or the slope for this third equation. Yep, yeah, thanks for everyone for doing that. Yep, 1/2. And then the b value. Yeah, so the b value is not undefined. Again, it was only undefined when we divided by a 0. So this b value here, technically, if we have 1/2 x, it's the same as 1/2 x plus 0. So that means that our b value is actually 0. So 0 will be the b value. Good job for those of you that put that in. And then a similar one here, but equally as tricky, is this one. So we have y equals mx plus b. Although this doesn't look like that format, it actually is the same format. All right, so if there's no x, what does that mean? What number can you multiply something by to get rid of it or to make it disappear? And the answer there would be 0. So technically there is 0x here. Again, it's not undefined. 0 is a number. So if we look at this again, if we put it in y equals mx plus b form, it would be y equals 0x plus 10. So 0 would be our slope here, which then means our y-intercept is 10. So again, on the quiz, I saw some people put undefined, and I saw some people write the slope was 10. The slope is 0 and our y-intercept is 10 here. And then our last one, it's in a little bit different of a form. So if I rearranged this to put it in slope-intercept form, it would look like that. So y equals negative x plus 6. Again, our slope is whatever is attached to our x or multiplied times our x. So in this case, it's negative x. And just like the first one we did, if it's just the x, that means 1. So this would be negative 1 as our slope. Yeah, good job. I see a bunch of people putting that in the chat already. And then what's our y-intercept? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Exactly 6. Perfect. Great job. So here's all of these. I will leave these up for a couple seconds just in case anyone needs more time. And again, I know this is not on a Google Doc. This is right on a Google slide or a PowerPoint, but you can edit this and you're going to submit this just like it would be a Google Doc. I did this because we can do the graphing on the Google slides that we can't do on the Google Doc. So you'll see in a couple slides here exactly why I did it. But here again are the answers. All right, I will clear this out and we can move on. So again, we've talked about this before, but when we are graphing an equation in slope-intercept form, we first have to identify the slope and the y-intercept. And then our starting point is our b value. And again, that is the y-intercept, not the x-intercept. So we are identifying the b value, and we're going to plot that point on the coordinate grid. So we're going to graph that. Then we use our m value, our slope, to start creating the line. So we are going from that b value that we've plotted, and we are going to rise and then run for our slope. Again, first you're going to rise or go up or down for the top of our fraction, and then we're going to go right for the bottom. And again, after you do that, you'll have your 2 points, and then we simply connect them to make our line. So if we look here, we have our equation, and then I've given you these 2 circles to put on the 2 points that we need, and then you can connect them with this line. So sorry about that. So I don't think I can do it in this format, so I will have to close that, but then I can do it right on here just like you would. So our equation is y equals 2/3 x plus 4. So if I identify our y-intercept, or our b value first, that would be the plus 4, exactly. I see some people putting that in the chat. So yep, plus 4. So that means I am going to move one of my points here to positive 4. So positive 4 is right here on the graph. So that's how we get our first point. And then we have 2/3, 2/3 as our slope or our m value. So that means from this dot, I'm going to rise the top number and then run the bottom number. So I will rise to, again, from our y-intercept, so go up 1, 2. That puts me right where my mouse is there. And then I'm going to run 3, or go 3 to the right. So 1, 2, 3. So that puts me right there. So I'm going to grab this, my second point, and again, rise 2, run 3, should put me right there. And again, now I have my 2 points. I've plotted them on the graph here. So now I'm just going to connect them with this line. And again, I'm going to just have to grab the end of this blue part and make sure they go directly through these 2 lines. So it looks like I think I got it here, maybe a little bit less. There we go. So there is the graph of 2/3 x plus 4. So this is how you're going to graph them on here. You are going to, again, I've put 2 circles on here, 2 dots that you can put for the y-intercept, and then the second point after you move for your slope. And then you are going to use the red line to graph that. So there's the first one. Let's do the second one together now. So this one, again, it's a little tricky. This is one that some people got wrong on the quiz. So we have y equals negative x plus 1. So to start, what is our y-intercept? Go ahead and tell me that in the chat. What's our y-intercept here? Yes, thank you. Thanks, Eve. Thanks for everyone for putting that in. Yep, +1, right? So I'm going to take my point and drop it here right on +1. If you see, that's right covering the 1 actually, but yeah, right there on the corner of those squares and on +1. Then what is my slope? So go ahead and put that in the chat for me. Again, this is what a couple people were confused on the quiz from Friday. So what is our slope here? Again, go ahead and put that in the chat for me. Yep, exactly. -1 is our slope. And again, we want to write that as a fraction. And I see some people already did that in the chat. So -1 as a fraction is -1/1. Again, if you have a whole number, so -1 would be a whole number, you're just going to put it over 1. So if we had 5 as our slope, you would just write it as 5/1. In this case, we have -1, so it's -1/1. So that means I am going to rise -1, which means I go down 1, and then over 1 to put my second point. So down 1 and over 1 would put me right here on the x-axis. And then I need to take my line and connect those two dots. So this one should look a little closer to this. Let's see if I can get it perfect. I think that's too far. Then again, you can play with it a little, try and get it as perfect as you can. And your line should look like that when you finish. And again, that orange or red line is y equals -x plus 1. All right, let's do one more together. Actually, there's 2 more. We can keep going. Let's do, actually, here's what I want you to do. Go ahead and do these next 2 on your own. Actually, I'll do the next one and then I'll have you do the last one on your own. So we'll do this one together again. Y equals 2. Y equals 2. So if we think back up to the quiz and we think up to what we just did, if there is no x, that means our slope is what? Our slope is 0, exactly. And then our y-intercept is 2, exactly. So I am going to put my y-intercept on here. And then if my slope is 0, that means I'm not going to go up or down at all. It just continues on this line forever. So that one was a tricky one, but if you have y equals something, that tells you that the y value is always going to be 2. So it should be a horizontal line on 2. Again, our y value here is always 2. That's why it doesn't go up or down at all. So if our slope is 0, that means that it's going to be a horizontal line. And again, the equation is y equals 2. So y should always equal 2. That was a tricky one on the quiz. So that is what that one should look like. And then the last one here is the one I'm going to have you do on your own. So go ahead and graph this one in your notes, and then we will talk about it. So if you started graphing that one, so the first thing we need to do is identify our m and b values, our slope and our y-intercept. So what is our y-intercept here? Go ahead and put it in the chat for me. Yep, yeah, thanks everyone for doing that. Again, it's not undefined. It is 0. So technically this is 4x plus 0. So that means our first point will be right on the origin at 0, 0. And then our second point, our slope is what? Go ahead and punch it in the chat for me. Yeah, and exactly. So I see a bunch of people putting it, put it as a fraction in the chat for me because we want to do rise over run. So again, this is a whole number. So what do we do if it's a whole number? Exactly, put it as 4/1. So 4/1. So we're going to rise 4 from this point and then run 1. Again, if you just rise 4 and put your next dot, it looks like a vertical line, and this is not a vertical line. So we should rise 4 and run 1. Check your graph. Your second point should be there. And then we can put our line in, and it actually fits those perfectly already, so you don't have to mess with it at all. You can just drop it through those 2 points. So the graph of y equals 4x looks like that one. And again, if you remember back, we're going to talk more about this tomorrow, but if you remember back, I said the larger the slope is, the steeper the line. So if we look like our first one, our slope was not very big, it was 2/3, and our line wasn't very steep. But if we look at this one, the line gets quite steep and our slope is bigger, it's 4 there. All right, so the next part, parallel and perpendicular lines. Hopefully you remember these from when you did some geometry stuff in elementary school and maybe even in 6th grade. But two lines are parallel if their slopes are the same. And then their slopes, if you are looking at perpendicular, which again, parallel means the two lines never touch, and perpendicular means they form a right angle. So they look like a T. They form a perfect right angle. So we'll show you those in a picture. But if they are perpendicular, their slopes are the opposite or negative reciprocal. So what does that mean? So that means if my slope is 1/2, the other line's slope would have to flip and become negative. So flipping and becoming negative, again, if one of my slopes is 1/2, the other slope would have to be negative, and then it flips, so 2/1. So again, those are opposite reciprocals or negative reciprocals again. And we'll talk about that more as we look at these and solve some of these. So what does that look like on a graph? So if we graph two lines, if we graph two lines, two parallel lines again will look like this. They will never touch. They can be anywhere on the graph. They can have any slope, but they will never touch the two lines. Perpendicular lines make a perfect right angle where they meet. So again, they are perfect. It looks like a T, or it could look like an X, but it has to be a perfect right angle. And again, the opposite reciprocal slopes. If we look at our slope of this orangish line here, y equals 3x minus 1. 3 is our slope, or 3/1. So if we flip 3/1 and make it negative, it would give us negative 1/3, and that is what that blue or purple line is there. So again, that one is y equals negative 1/3 x minus 2. The y-intercepts don't matter for this. We're just talking about the slopes. All right, so if we try some out, you'll notice on these ones, we have two equations now. You're going to graph both separately on here, though, and then you're going to tell me, are they parallel, perpendicular, or are they just two random lines that don't do anything special? So if we start with our first line, y equals 2x plus 5, go ahead and tell me in the chat, what is the y-intercept? What is the b value for that one? Exactly, 5, right? So I will take one of my points and put it up at positive 5. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I went one too many maybe there. So there's at 5. Again, you're going to have to count on these ones because I did not put the numbers in. And then what is our slope? So our y-intercept, our b value is 5. Our slope, or our m value, is 2. Exactly. I see some people putting it in. So that means I'm going to rise 2, run 1, and I will put my second point. That's not quite there. I got to go a little bit higher. I think right there. Perfect. So then I just need to connect these two dots and make sure your lines are as close as you can get them, or as accurate as you can get them, because it will look wrong if you don't do it properly. So that looks like the first one. Then our second one, y equals 2x minus 3. So go ahead and in the chat tell me what the y-intercept is for that one. Exactly. Again, it's not positive 3, it is negative 3. So that means I'm going to put one of my lines down here, one of my points, excuse me, down here at negative 3. And then our slope is what? And again, write that as a fraction, 2 or 2/1. So I am going to rise 2, run 1, and it should put me right about here. And if I put my line now connecting those, let's see how it looks. There we go, just about. So do those look like they are parallel or perpendicular or neither if we look at those? And again, that's why we want to make sure our lines are just about perfect. And again, yeah, so I see people putting it in the chat. Yeah, those look like they are parallel lines. So this one again, if we go back up to what it tells us, two lines are parallel if their slopes are the same. So our graph looks like they're parallel, and if we think about it, our slope was 2 or 2 over 1 for both of those lines, so they are indeed parallel. So here's the deal. I want you to do the next 3. I'm going to put you in your breakout rooms, and I will be around to check and make sure you can get all of these graphed. So I will split you into your breakout rooms, and then again, you're going to plot them, and then next to your graph right here, you're going to write whether they are parallel, perpendicular, or neither.